When you raise a Shih Tzu, it's very easy to believe that love is automatic. You feed them, bathe them, care for them, talk to them every day, so how could they not love you? I used to think that way. For many years, I assumed that as long as I treated my dog well, the bond between us would naturally become close. But then there were very small moments that made me stop. She didn't run to me when I called. She avoided my eyes. She stood up and walked away when I sat down beside her. Not because she hated me, but because something in the way we were interacting wasn't quite right. Living with Shih Tzus for a long time taught me that a dog's love doesn't operate on obligation. They don't love you because you've done enough. They love you when they feel safe, respected, and understood. And when those things aren't fully there yet, they will tell you not with barking, but with behavior. Part 1. When your Shih Tzu avoids eye contact, it's not stubbornness, it's distance. One of the first signs I learned to recognize, and also the one most often misunderstood, is when a Shih Tzu avoids making direct eye contact with you. Many people assume this means the dog is stubborn, disobedient, or simply doesn't care. But after living with Shih Tzus long enough, I came to understand that eye contact means something very different to dogs. For dogs, looking directly into someone's eyes is a powerful action. It can signal trust, but it can also signal tension. When a Shih Tzu consistently avoids your gaze, turns their head away, or looks briefly and then lowers their eyes, it usually means they don't feel comfortable in that moment. I used to have a habit of looking straight at my dog when calling her name, when giving commands, when trying to get her attention. I thought that was clear communication. But for my Shih Tzu, it created pressure. She began avoiding my eyes, sitting at an angle, and sometimes leaving the room altogether. Not because she didn't love me, but because she didn't yet feel safe enough to meet me directly in that way. When I changed, softened my voice, reduced direct confrontation, and allowed her to approach on her own, the eye contact slowly returned. Not immediately, not all at once, but enough for me to understand something important. A dog's love cannot be forced through intense attention. If your Shih Tzu avoids your eyes, don't rush to feel hurt or angry. See it as a very gentle reminder that the relationship may need more space, more patience, and more listening. Because sometimes, the most important step toward being loved isn't moving closer, it's knowing when to step back. Part 2. When a Shih Tzu's body is saying, "I'm not ready yet." After understanding the meaning behind eye contact, I began paying closer attention to my Shih Tzu's body, not the obvious actions, but the smallest details. And it was there that I realized how much dogs communicate, even without words. There were days when I called her and her tail didn't wag at all. Or it wagged, but very slowly, very lightly, sometimes slightly to one side. To an outsider, that might look like laziness. But to me, it was the first sign of hesitation. Not happiness, not excitement, and not complete comfort either. Her body was still there, but her emotions had stepped back. Then I started noticing distance. Not dramatic distance like running away or hiding, but subtle distance, a small step back when I moved closer, or standing up and walking away the moment I sat down beside her. These actions weren't defiant. They were simply my Shih Tzu's way of saying, "I need more space right now." And what saddened me was how often people misread these signals, assuming the dog is being disobedient or difficult. Another sign that took me a long time to understand was how she rested when I was nearby. A Shih Tzu who truly feels safe will lie fully relaxed, body loose, sometimes even rolling onto their back with their belly exposed. But when she didn't, when she curled inward, kept her legs tucked, held her head slightly raised, ears always alert that wasn't random. It was a body in a mild state of vigilance. Not extreme fear, but not enough trust to fully let go. And then there was the sign that made me think the most she avoided sleeping in the same room as me. At first, I told myself she was simply independent, that not every dog wants to sleep near their owner. But with Shih Tzus, a breed with a strong pack instinct, sleep is the most vulnerable time. When a dog chooses to sleep far away, near a doorway, or in another room altogether, it often reflects that they don't yet see that space as completely safe. When I put all these signals together, I realized something deeply important. My Shih Tzu wasn't rejecting my love. She was protecting her own emotional boundaries. And the more I tried to force closeness or ignored these small signs, the wider the distance became. Only when I slowed down, observed more carefully, and respected her quiet messages did her body begin to soften. The tail wagged again. The distance shrank. Sleep slowly returned closer to me. Not because I tried harder, but because I finally responded better. And that is the lesson only longtime Shih Tzu owners truly understand. A dog's love begins with a sense of safety, not with human effort alone. Part 3. When your Shih Tzu doesn't seek you out, not coldness, but lack of trust. There was a period when I realized my Shih Tzu was no longer initiating interaction with me the way she used to. Not in an obvious, dramatic way, but through small gaps that appeared often enough to catch my attention. She was still in the house, still following her routine, but the sense of connection slowly began to fade. The first sign was that she didn't want to be cuddled, especially after meals. Before, after eating, she would often come closer, lie beside me, or allow me to gently touch her for a while. Then she started standing up and walking away the moment I reached out. No irritation, no negative reaction, just avoidance. At first, I told myself she simply didn't like being disturbed when she was full. But when the behavior continued, I understood that the issue wasn't timing. It was trust. Another sign that made me think deeply was that she rarely held eye contact with me. Not complete avoidance, but brief glances that ended quickly. With dogs, eye contact isn't just communication, it's vulnerability. When a Shih Tzu avoids eye contact, it's often a way to avoid conflict, pressure, or emotional discomfort. Then I noticed that she stopped following me. Before, if I stood up, she stood up too. But gradually, she stayed where she was. I moved to another room, and she didn't come. When I felt tired or upset, she no longer approached me the way she once did. Not because she didn't care, but because in those moments, she no longer saw me as her safest source of comfort. And that realization was difficult to accept. There was one small but telling sign: she stopped bringing me toys or gifts. For Shih Tzus, carrying a toy, a chew, or even a random object and placing it near you isn't meaningless play. It's sharing. It's an invitation to connect. When that behavior disappeared, it meant she was no longer actively building that bond. I asked myself what I had done wrong, but I eventually understood that trust doesn't fade because of a single mistake. It fades because of many small interactions that go unheard. Perhaps I had held her when she wasn't ready, called her too often, created pressure without realizing it. The most important lesson I learned was this: a Shih Tzu doesn't withdraw to punish you. They withdraw to protect themselves. And only when you allow them space, give them choice, and stop forcing closeness does the connection begin to return slowly, but genuinely. Because for a dog, love isn't proven by how close you stand. It's proven by how safe you feel to come back on your own. Part 4. When a Shih Tzu reacts negatively and chooses someone else. This is no longer a small misunderstanding. There came a moment when I had to admit that the relationship between my Shih Tzu and me was no longer just lacking connection. It had shifted into something else, a state where she began reacting negatively toward me. And that was when I understood these signs could no longer be ignored. It started with ignoring commands. Not the kind that comes from confusion, but the kind that comes from clear understanding without response. I called her name. She heard me. I gave a signal. She looked, and then she turned away, lay down, or simply did nothing. At that point, training was no longer a technical issue. It became an emotional struggle. And when a Shih Tzu stops cooperating in training, it is rarely because they are stubborn. More often, it is because they no longer feel safe interacting with you in the role of a guide or leader. The next sign that truly stopped me in my tracks was when she refused to take food from my hand. For a Shih Tzu, food is not just nutrition, it is a bridge. When a dog hesitates or refuses to accept food directly from you, it signals caution. Not anger, not obvious fear, but a very real emotional distance. Then came her discomfort with my touch, the slight flinches, the subtle turning of her head when I reached out, the small steps backward when I moved closer. These were not random behaviors. They were her body saying, "I don't feel comfortable." And when that discomfort is ignored, it can escalate into growling, baring teeth, or defensive reactions. Not because a Shih Tzu is aggressive, but because she feels cornered. The moment that hurt the most, but also brought the clearest understanding, was when I realized she chose someone else instead of me. She went to them, lay beside them, slept near them, relaxed, open, natural. While with me, she kept her distance, avoided contact, stayed alert. There is nothing more painful for an owner than that realization. But eventually, I understood something essential. A Shih Tzu doesn't choose people based on liking or disliking. They choose where they feel safer. The person who doesn't apply pressure. The person who expects less. The person who allows them to be themselves. The signs in Part 4 are the most serious, not because they are frightening, but because they require real change from the human side. Not fixing the dog, but changing how we approach, communicate, and set expectations. A Shih Tzu doesn't turn away from you in a single day. They retreat gradually, through many small signals. And when they choose someone else, it isn't betrayal. It is a clear reminder that the relationship needs to be rebuilt from the foundation: safety, respect, and patience. Not everyone is ready to face that truth. But if you are brave enough to look directly at it, Part 4 is not the end, it can be a beginning again, in a way that is healthier for both you and your Shih Tzu. Part 5. Your dog doesn't hate you. They are responding to what they've experienced after all the signs discussed in the previous parts. There is one thing I want to emphasize, and it is also the hardest truth for many owners to accept: dogs don't hate you without reason. Shih Tzus, like most dog breeds, do not hold resentment or hatred in the human sense. What they show on the outside is always a reflection of what they feel on the inside. And those feelings are shaped by experience. In many cases, distance grows from a lack of emotional bonding. Not because you didn't care enough, but because the connection was never built in the right way. You can feed your dog well and take them out regularly. But if daily interactions lack listening, if there are few moments where the dog is allowed to initiate, to choose, to feel respected, the relationship can still become fragile. Emotional bonding doesn't come from the amount of time spent together, but from the quality of presence. Another cause, especially common in rescue dogs, is negative past experiences. A Shih Tzu may carry memories you cannot see. Some reactions are not caused by you, yet are triggered by the way you touch them, call their name, or approach them without realizing it. In those moments, the dog's response is not directed at who you are now, but at protecting themselves from a familiar feeling that once caused harm. And finally, there is a very ordinary cause that few people notice: misaligned communication. Humans often use human language with dogs calling repeatedly, staring directly, hugging when the dog isn't ready, expecting immediate responses. For a Shih Tzu, these actions can feel like pressure. Not because you are wrong, but because you are not yet speaking their language. Living with Shih Tzus for many years taught me a quiet lesson: a dog's love doesn't disappear. It withdraws when safety disappears. And the hopeful part is that safety can be rebuilt not through urgency, but through patience. When you give your Shih Tzu space instead of forcing closeness, when you observe instead of judging, when you adjust yourself before trying to fix your dog, the relationship begins to shift. Slowly, very slowly, but genuinely. This video isn't meant to make you doubt the love of the dog beside you. It's simply a reminder that a dog's love needs to be nurtured properly, just like any deep relationship. And sometimes, the first step to being loved again is simply learning to listen to what your dog has been telling you for a long time in silence.